Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Today we're going to play the Knicks Player Grid. Who's the most overrated Knick? Who's the most underrated? That and so much more coming up next.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On Knicks, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day. If you want to become an everyday, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell on YouTube to ensure you never miss an episode there. And then if you're with us on the go, be sure to hit that auto download function on your favorite podcast platform of choice. And then we'll always be with you, as weird as that sounds. And maybe it's even a little too much. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall. I've been covering the NBA for a decade, currently in the process of a cross-country move, which is why I have not been on a ton of episodes recently, but that will be done, ? Tomorrow, or at least I'll be going tomorrow. So hopefully there'll be a lot more good content coming your way before the start of the NBA season. I'm going solo today, so I decided to get a little ambitious. There's this graphic, if you haven't seen it, it is called a player grid, and basically, who am I kidding? Everyone's seen it. It is sweeping across NBA Twitter, and you just put all the guys on your teams into different categories. And I thought, inspired by my buddy Nick Angstead over at Locked On Mavs, that would be a really, really fun solo episode. So let's get into it right now. This is a rare one. I don't know if I've ever said this. So I rarely say this. It's worth watching this on YouTube. It's basically, I'm going to post a blank version of the graphic, and as we go throughout the episode, I'll continue to update it with the players that are in there. Of course, you could listen and get essentially the same effect. I think I just want a little reward for having put 35 to 40 minutes into making these graphics. Is probably the worst person to ever use Photoshop or Canva of all time. I think it would take a normal person about 10 to 15. All right, let's get into it now. The New York Knicks Player Grid. So let's just start off announcing the categories we're going to take you through. Most underrated Knick, most overrated, best Knick, worst Knick, funniest Knick, most annoying Knick, most potential New York Knick, most wasted potential Knick, best passer, best perimeter defender, best rim defender, most athletic, best handles, best shooters, best in the post, best role player. All right, without further ado, our first category, most underrated, and the award goes to Deuce McBride. To me, this is a direct reflection of how the rest of the world perceives him, because if you are a Knicks fan, no one is the most underrated because you think all these guys are absolutely the best. If you are an ardent NBA follower, you might know a little bit about Deuce McBride. I think I previously would have probably put Dante DiVincenzo in here because I don't think people around the NBA world were as quick to recognize, given that they weren't watching every single game, especially the games where Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle were both injured. But that stretch Dante had about halfway through last year was putting up 26 points per game, doing it pretty efficiently, showing the ability to scale up his scoring, take 12 threes a game if you need it. Heck, take 16, take 20 threes in a game if needed, attack the rim, showing off a more advanced off the dribble game than he ever had at any point in his NBA career, showing, despite not a massive jump in terms of efficiency, more creativity at the rim, more ability to have tough finishes at the rim when you have to put the whole offense on his shoulders. So he was my initial instinct with this one, but I think his playoff performance pushed him into kind of a new category with people where they were looking at him saying, all right, this guy's a dude. He had a buzzer beating shot to knock off the Sixers in game 2. He had 37 points in a do or die game 7. I know some of that was in pseudo garbage time against the Pacers. I think he has kind of earned his respect around the league. And I think Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo, not that they need it, but I think reputation has caught up to reality with them just because of how great Jalen Brunson is. And in a way, they have rode his coattails as sort of that Villanova 3, now Villanova 4 with Bridges. And I think there is a recognition of how special those guys are around the NBA. I don't know if you can say the same thing about Deuce McBride. He is someone who I don't think the average NBA fan either knows he exists or they just know him by name. And I think even talking to Some Knicks fans, I think before the playoffs, like they might not have realized like just how essential, just how good this guy is. Because I thought he had stretches last year, particularly after Julius went down and he got put into the starting lineup, where it was like, all right, there were nights where like he was your second best player, your third best player, making $4 million a year. I mean, if that doesn't tell you the guy is underrated, the contract he got more than anything else tells you he's underrated around the NBA. Because if the perception of him had been even like slightly more than, hey, this guy is a fringe rotation player, his agent is never letting him sign a contract where he's getting what, $12 million over the next 3 years, 14 over 4. It is an obscene deal. And he proved in the latter half of the year to be an elite shooter, to be a very good, very disruptive positional defender, to be a smart passer, to be someone who is not a point guard and cannot run an NBA offense, but can absolutely make someone look stupid off the dribble. If you can't tell, I am really excited about Deuce McBride. And I think even as he enters his like early to mid-ish 20s, like I still think there is a lot of room for him to improve and a lot of room for him to get better. And I think we will see someone come back who is a little bit more prepared to play backup point guard minutes this year. All right, our next category, most overrated Knick. So I am going to give a caveat here that I don't think anyone on this Knicks team is overrated. And maybe the few non-Knicks fans that hate watch this podcast, if anyone's sticking around from that Celtics episode we did the other week, are booing and saying, screw you, orange and blue glasses, all that good stuff. But here is where I'm going to push against that a little bit. The Knicks are really freaking good and really, really good teams that don't have guys. Like, to me, the epitome of overrated in the NBA is empty stats, right? Pretty much every statistic gained on the Knicks, at least through last seasons, but I could even probably go back as far as the last 2 seasons, I would say had some merit to it and had a direct contribution to winning. There are certain nights where I'm like, all right, Julius Randle's kind of padding his points total. Heck, I don't want to pick on Julius. There are nights where you could say Jalen is padding his points total a little bit. And yet I would not call either of those guys overrated. I might even make an argument that they are too underrated. All right, so here's the player I'm very reluctantly going to call overrated. Someone who's not actually on the Knicks last year, and that is Mikal Bridges. I want everyone to put down their pitchforks here for a second. Let me explain what I mean. I think he is overrated in the sense of what the Knicks gave up for him, and that he is not a player you would traditionally consider worth 6 first-round picks. Generally, those guys are multi-time All-Stars, guys who are maybe going to be borderline Hall of Famers. And the Knicks did it instead for Mikal Bridges, who is never going to make an All-Star team. Now, let me make a case going the other way. The case going the other way is that he had unique value to the New York Knicks in that he got Jalen Brunson to sign a contract that is probably half his market value as a top 10 player in the NBA. That is extraordinary. That is worth multiple first-round picks to get that kind of discount. Mikal Bridges himself is on an incredible discount that allowed the Knicks to fit him under their cap without ultimately having to break up what was a fantastic team last year. It will look even better if Isaiah Hartenstein had stayed, and they actually could have done that while bringing in Mikal Bridges. So that is where he has a lot of value. If he is able to scale back his game, normally when you trade for a guy like that, you're talking about scaling up their game. If he's able to scale back his game to a little bit closer to what it was on the Phoenix Suns, he is just flat out one of the elite role players on planet Earth. I think where he's a little bit overrated is Knicks fans, myself included at times, and I said as much on the initial podcast when they got him. Some as guilty of this as anyone else. Where he could be a little overrated is the idea that he is going to make the difference between winning a championship and not winning a championship. And I think where the Knicks could have maybe made a mistake here is he might be just a notch below that level of player. And I'm curious to see, all right, is there more to his game? Like come playoff time, like could he have like on a night where Jalen Brunson doesn't have it, Julius Randle's kind of locked up, you're playing the Boston Celtics, it's a game 5 2-2 series. Could Mikal Bridges go out there and have an efficient 30-point game? And right now, my answer, I lean no. I think if the answer is yes to that, then maybe he is properly rated, and maybe he is a guy who could ultimately make the difference between winning a championship and losing a championship. Again, I love Mikal Bridges. I just had to pick someone for this, and to me, he was the closest thing to an overrated player with when how his game has been scaled up. There has been a distinct drop-off in efficiency. Certainly not in that first season on the Nets, but in the second, we got a sample size of 82 games or 83. 82. That was not the year traded, 82 games. And the first, we got a sample size of just 27 games in a 4-game playoff run. That was pretty impressive. So I know I'm talking out both sides of my mouth, but that is how I feel about Mikal Bridges. We're going to come back with plenty of more categories, including telling you why Julius Randle is secretly the Knicks with the most potential. I'm spoiling that one. We'll get into that in just a sec here on Locked On Knicks. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day or therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. I am like that with the gym. I know if I go to the gym, it is going to be a good day for me. And yet it is very, very hard. Shout out to ADHD. It is very, very hard to get myself to go to the gym. But ultimately, when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. As big as the gym is for me, therapy is probably even more important. It is a safe space, a forum for me to just vent and to get kind of a constructive critique on my own thoughts in a way that I can't BS the other person. I can't talk my way out of it. Confront your feelings and face them and ultimately be okay with them. So never skip a therapy day with BetterHelp. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Alrighty, let's keep this rolling. Our player grid. All right, we are moving on to category number 3. That is the best player on the Knicks. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. It's Jalen Brunson. All right, next, the worst player on the Knicks. This is another one. I'm a nice guy. I'm someone who wants to give out gold stars to everyone. If I was a teacher, I'd probably just give everyone A's. So this was a little hard on me, but I ultimately went the worst NBA player on the New York Knicks right now is Pacom Dadier, and that is a shame because I love Pacom. I am very, very excited about his potential. I think he has a chance to be a big scoring, multifaceted wing for the Knicks down the road, which would be very, very exciting given that they have guys like that in Mikal Bridges. OG Anunoby gives you a little bit of that. Julius Randle in some ways plays like a facsimile of that, and yet they haven't really had like the prototype version of that guy in a very long time. Maybe since Tracy McGrady's first game as on the Knicks when he torched the Thunder. Carmelo Anthony, obviously, was the last version of that. But he is not there right now. He is not anything close to that right now. If his struggles in summer league were any indication, he is someone who would, at this point, probably be a disaster if he was plugged into the back end of an NBA rotation, and he would be currently more suited to play across the bridge with the Brooklyn Nets, taking for the first draft pick. We love you guys over at Locked On Nets, and we hope you make it through the season okay. But Pacom is just not an NBA player right now. Again, I am high on him down the road. Right now, he is not like that. Funniest player in the Knicks is also a really easy one. Is Mr. Breast Milk himself, Josh Hart. I have gotten more joy out of reading Josh Hart quotes than I have out of a lot of stand-up specials the last couple of years. They always make me happy. I love the way he ribs Jalen Brunson and just sees it kind of as his job on the team to keep Jalen as humble as possible. So I think he is easily the option for this. Most annoying guy on the team. This was another one that just felt mean. I was not super happy about doing. And then I realized there is a logical answer, and it is also a compliment. I consider Deuce McBride because of his in-your-face defense, but it is obviously Mr. Cam Payne. We got the experience, right? In the first round of the playoffs, he is a gnat, right? He is in your face. He is clapping. He is dancing. His jumper is ugly as you know what, but it just seems to go in at the worst possible time. He is quick. He is like just slinking around your guys, finishing a layup, laughing at you after. Like he is kind of the epitome of the small, annoying NBA guard. And I kind of love him for it. Now that he's on the Knicks, he's a great example. I'm sure fans of other teams would certainly call Josh Hart annoying. They would probably call Julius Randle annoying. They'd probably even call our beloved Jalen Brunson annoying. But I think it's Cam Payne. I think it's the easiest for me to think of him as annoying because he was just the enemy so recently, and I despised basketball despised everyone on that Sixers team. So he was an easy one for me to come up with. All right, most potential. So I already spoiled this one, but I'm going to give you my reasoning because there were a few different people I thought about for this. I thought I literally had to look up the definition of potential because I was like, all right, is it the person who has the highest ceiling? Because if so, that is still very clearly Jalen Brunson. Like I don't think anyone else on this team will ever be as good at basketball as Jalen Brunson is today at 4:45 on a Tuesday, September 3rd. I don't think anyone will ever be as good at basketball as Jalen Brunson. Or is it the most room to grow? And if it's the most room to grow, the answer I had was it could have been Pacom. I was putting Tyler Kolek because I kind of think he has a chance to turn into a good starting NBA point guard. A good starting NBA point guard generally means you are one of the best 50 players on planet Earth. And that is a long way from where he is right now, which is a borderline rotational NBA player. And yet the guy I ultimately went with was Mr. Julius Randle. And my rationale for that is because we've never gotten to see it in the playoffs. And it is the smallest of sample sizes. It is kind of the flimsiest thing to hold on to that could just blow away in my hand. But that game 5 against Cleveland, where he was finally healthy from the ankle, and you just saw like a half of him just playing dominant basketball and just bulldozing and hitting fadeaways and hitting threes. And we have seen that, of course, we have seen that version of Julius Randle in the NBA season. It is why it is a little bit of an insult to give him this award. And yet, despite that, despite the fact that he's made 2 All-NBAs, despite the fact that he's made 3 All-Star teams in the last 4 years, I gave him this award because I think there is a ceiling there of Julius Randle as a playoff megastar, where he is in the conference finals and he's putting up 24 points. He's putting up 9-10 rebounds a game. He's putting up 5 assists per game. And we're saying, oh my God, we have someone who is capable of being the second best player on a championship team. I don't think that is the likeliest outcome for Julius. I think that is maybe, I don't know, 5 times out of 100, 10 times out of 100. But I do think that ceiling is there because we have seen in games, in moments when he is on the floor with the best players in the world, and like he is that dude. He is the one shining. I always go back to that Timberwolves game, the first game of OG Anunoby's Knicks tenure, where it was Jalen Brunson and Anthony Edwards, right? Like 2 guys who, like within the next 5 years, are going to own the NBA or be on like the extended NBA's Mount Rushmore. And yet it was Julius who was kind of the clear-cut best player on the floor. A couple of other all-stars, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby having himself a very nice night. And Julius has that ceiling that he can be the best player on the floor in a game with that type of setting, with that type of intensity, going against the best defense in the NBA. So that is why I give Julius the most potential award. Most wasted potential. This was another mean one, so I decided to do it to someone who is no longer on the Knicks. It is Isaiah Hartenstein, and this is not personal, and I say that in the sense of this is not saying Isaiah Hartenstein, the player, has the most wasted potential, because I would argue he is the guy out of everyone in the Knicks last year who maximized his potential to the greatest extent. You could say him, I would say him, Jalen, and Deuce are probably the big 3 of that category, right? Like whatever their ceiling was physically from the day they were born, they have gotten to it as a basketball player. And most guys in the NBA, not everyone, because there's some people who are just true outliers, who are physical freaks who get into the NBA and that. Most players in the NBA come close to that. Isaiah Hartenstein has done as good of a job of doing that as pretty much anyone in the league. I am looking at this from a team perspective, and that is the most wasted potential of the team. Because if Isaiah Hartenstein had stayed with the Knicks this summer, and I know I'm harping on it, I'm the guy whose girlfriend broke up with him 5 years ago, and I'm still talking about him. I'm like, yeah, you know, what if we were still together? So I apologize to Knicks fans for that. And yet, I think he is ultimately the difference between this Knicks team being very, very good and a dark horse title contender and being neck and neck with the Boston Celtics for saying, hey, this is the team that I think is going to go out there and win an NBA title. I just think they were a team with essentially no weaknesses with Isaiah Hartenstein, and now they are a team with some soft, mushy points that you can poke a sword in. I'm still on a House of the Dragons kick over here. All right, so that is most wasted potential. Let's take one more break. And when we come back, we're going to tell you the best passer, the best perimeter defender, the best rim defender, most athletic, best handles, best shooters, best in the post, best role player, all that and more. Coming up next over on Locked On Knicks. But first, I want to tell you about our good friends over at Game Time. So I was telling everyone listening, shout out to my guy Adrian, a longtime listener of the show. He was also there, that I got to go to the Childish Gambino concert last week. If he's coming to your city and you haven't seen him yet, this is an ad just for Childish Gambino. Go see him. It is an incredible show. Generational performer, generational talent. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about Game Time. Game Time helped me get tickets to that event. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. That is what I use to get these primo Gambino seats at the Barclays Center. What else do I like about Game Time? Well, they offer a feature called all-in pricing. When you toggle that feature, it shows the total up front, so there are no surprise fees at checkouts. There's nothing that makes me irate like having two tickets, saying this is a reasonable price, and then seeing what the actual end price is after the fees, throwing up, shutting down my computer, and going and sitting in a dark room for a while. Game Time lets you avoid that. The other thing I love is their lowest price guarantee. That means if you find a lower price ticket on a different site, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And once I saw that for the first time ever, I was like, why would I ever use another site? You will inherently always get the lowest price on Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, let's keep it rolling. Up next, I'm trying to remember what number we're at. There we go. Best passer. This is going to be a little bit of a ballsy one again. Isaiah Hartenstein might have been a candidate for this if he was on the team. I considered Julius Randle. I considered Josh Hart. I considered Jalen Brunson, but I ultimately went with Knicks rookie Tyler Kolek. I am super duper excited about what this dude is going to bring to to as a passer. He just has the full package. I think my favorite quality in a passer, and you see this on Nikola Jokic a lot, I guess, is the ability to throw a weighted ball. And what I mean by that is just a sense of like leading someone. How much speed do you put on it? How quickly do you want it to drop out of the air? What is the ideal trajectory that if I'm lofting it up the court, that I could get it to someone? Because it reminds me of what I love about football, what I love about quarterback play, right? That intuitive sense of understanding a teammate's speed, understanding exactly how to put him in the best position to score the ball and have success. It is selfless, and it is physical attributes combining with mental attributes, combining with court sense, combining with is it prior perception? I don't know the word, but I know generally what it means. I love a great passer, and I think Tyler Kolek is a genius. Frankly, he is a passing genius, and I cannot wait until he breaks his way into the Knicks rotation and we get to see it all the time. All right, best perimeter defender. I'll keep this quick. It's OG Anunoby. Easy peasy. Mikal Bridges 3 years ago would have been a conversation. Right now, coming into this specific year, he has some stuff to prove. OG, I would posit on any given night, might have the highest ceiling as a perimeter defender of anyone on this planet, with the exception of, I'm going to say, Kawhi Leonard, maybe Alex Caruso, Herb Jones. Those are kind of my big four. I think Kawhi at his best was in a category of his own. I think OG comes pretty close to replicating that. Best rim defender, no surprise here. It is, I doubled down there, so you're getting 2 for 1. I skipped one. That's my bad. All right, 2 for 1 here. Best rim defender is Mitchell Robinson. Easy peasy. Most athletic. So this is one that I put a lot of thought into. Initially, I was just going to kind of do the thing where you try to include as many people as possible, and I was going to go with Jacob Toppin, just because he's like kind of the best. Like how do we traditionally measure athleticism? Run and jump. And then I was gonna get kind of cute and say, I'm gonna say Jalen Brunson, because of his coordination. I'm like, yeah, sure, he's like 6'2" and like kind of thick. That doesn't mean he's not an athletic monster. His touch, his footwork is all insane. I thought about Dante DiVincenzo. Maybe he's the right answer. He is like obviously a ridiculous dunker. His ability to recover for blocks is kind of crazy. I went Josh Hart because to me, he is just such a physical marvel in terms of how he rebounds at his size. I think it is extraordinary. I think this is a term you would typically, in my second football reference in the show, my final fantasy football draft tonight. His contact balance is the term I was going to use. Is a term you would typically use with running backs. And yet I think Josh Hart has extraordinary contact balance. His speed coast to coast for someone who, again, is not considered a traditionally great athlete, right? Like a Zach LaVine, like LeBron James in his prime. He is incredible coast to coast speed. His strength is amazing for his size. So I have Josh Hart as my best athlete. Next category, best handles. That was easy. It is Jalen Brunson. I want to give an honorable mention to Deuce McBride because I think per minute, Deuce might have dropped more defenders than any player in the NBA last year. I did not watch enough of other teams to confirm that, but from what I saw with my two eyes, it was Deuce. But it's Jalen overall. He is just so smart about how he uses dribble. I always think about that play against the Kings where he just tortured poor Keon Ellis by looking him off as if he was waiting for a screen crossover and just left his head twirling like a dreidel. After that, he is just hyper coordinated, and his handle is just so functional. Like it does not have the flash of a Kyrie Irving, but at his size with quicks, but not incredible overall speed, he can get wherever he wants on the court. And to me, that makes up a great handle. All right, best shooter, super easy. It is Dante DiVincenzo. Maybe I shouldn't say super easy because there is a case for Jalen Brunson. If you say best shot maker, I would say Jalen Brunson, best shooter. I think about ranged shooting. And Dante is the one guy in this team that is a monster out to 30 feet. He is probably one of the 5 to 10 best shooters in basketball right now. So that one was pretty easy. Best in the post. Award number 3 for Mr. Jalen Brunson. So I thought about giving this to Julius Randle because if you look up the post-up numbers on NBA.com, Julius Randle is the one guy on the Knicks to qualify. So they say a minimum of 10 minutes a game and 10 possessions per play type to qualify. So Julius Randle is like the post up is just rarely used in the NBA anymore. So there are not that many guys who do it. And he is not bad at it, but he has kind of middling efficiency. If you go throughout the entire NBA, right? Like it is not particularly good. Like he is at 0.9 points per possession. That does not place him in like the top 50 or so guys in the league. Ironically, Isaiah Hartenstein, who almost never did it, he's one of the most efficient in the NBA at it. Julius is one of the higher volume post-up guys, though, in the league. He has the 5th most post-ups per game, behind only Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo, Joel Embiid, and Nikola Jokic. But he's not that efficient at it. Jalen Brunson was the single most efficient post-up player in the entire NBA last year. In the playoffs, he put up 1.57 points per possession. That was 100th percentile. No one was even close. I didn't have it pulled up again. I'm going to look right now. So after him, Al Horford was at 1.46. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was at 1.4. Again, he was more than 1/10 of a point per possession, better than anyone else. He is a certifiable monster when he goes to it. Just has the deepest bag, the deepest footwork bag I've ever seen, I think, from a guard in the NBA. I need to think about that. Steph is in that mix, but I'd maybe give it to Jalen. He is as skilled as they come. He ultimately, I think just because it was not post-up player, because it was best in post, I think you have to give it to Jalen. Julius stands, you know where to find me. Hit me up if that was wrong. All right, final one, best role player. It's Josh Hart, and I felt bad for not diversifying a little bit more. Maybe I should have given Dante most athletic, so those two would both be at 2, and Jalen would be at 3. That probably would have felt a little bit fairer, but instead Josh Hart gets 3 categories. Jalen Brunson gets 3 categories. And to me, it's because like there are guys who are called role players. And I kind of just did this with Mikal Bridges, right? Like he's very much towing the line, but really they are superstars that because of team context are masquerading as role players. I think of Kristaps Porzingis. I think of Drew Holiday. I think of Derek White, right? Like those guys on the Celtics, because they're so loaded. They play roles that are normally role player type roles. And again, as much as I hate to say it, I think all three of those guys, not taking into account injury problems, are probably better basketball players than Josh Hart at the end of the day. But in terms of pure role players, like guys who are not going to make an all-star team, who there's not really a context where they would ever make an all-star team. I guess that is ultimately my definition of a role guy versus like a star masquerading as a role guy. I think Josh is as good as anyone in the league. He might be better than anyone in the league. I think if the Knicks win a championship, he will go down as one of the great role guys in NBA history in terms of his ability to do what is asked of him at an extraordinarily high level, get rebounds, take charges, play defense. And this year in the playoffs, I think what sealed this for me, for him over Dante and for him over anyone else on this team and him over pretty much anyone else in the league was, hey, you didn't do this last year. You're not super comfortable with it. We need you to go out there and make some threes because half our team is injured. And he went and hit, 9 in the first 2 games of the Sixers series. To me, that is a role player. It is put on your hard hat. It is get done what needs to get done. It is make your game work in any context. And Josh Hart epitomizes that on the Knicks and in the NBA as a whole. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Locked On Knicks. Possibly, I don't know, I might try to record one tomorrow before I leave. Possibly my final episode recorded in New York City for the foreseeable future. So a little bit of an end of an era for Locked On Knicks, but I'm going to have a lot more space where I'm going. I'm going to have a much nicer studio, and I think it is going to benefit the show, make it a whole lot better. I'll be back in New York frequently, and of course, I will still be with you 5 days a week covering the New York Knicks. We are diving deep, as Alex let you know last show, into player previews, team previews, a lot of fun guests coming up, a lot of great content. So stick with Locked On Knicks. Until then, we'll talk to you soon. Peace out.